Hi there. I'm here with week 3 of my quarantine quadruple feature. Like week 2, I was just looking for cinematic comfort food, so I went with 80s horror comedies. I'm a child of the 80s. That's just kind of what makes me feel good. I went with something similar for week 3, which were fast and fun vampire movies, 3 of which are also from the 80s as well. So fun vampire movies was the theme for week 3. Okay, movie number 1, as you probably guessed from the shirt, is Joel Schumacher's The Lost Boys. I love The Lost Boys. This is one I grew up on. I watched it constantly when I was a kid. So this is just a shot of pure nostalgia for me. It makes me feel good. And I actually think it holds up as a really solid, fun, cool vampire flick by today's standards. It stars an incredibly sexy bad boy, Kiefer Sutherland, at his baddest. Got the bleach blonde hair and the stubble coming in. It also has both Coreys, which was a big thing for the 80s, Feldman and Haim, one of whom we still have, one of whom we tragically do not. And it also stars Diane Wiest as the mom. She is one of my favorite cinematic mothers. She is so good at playing a mom. She really has this nurturing quality that just comes through the screen. Her and Dee Wallace are easily my 2 favorite moms in the history of cinema. Although Jessica Chastain in The Tree of Life is a phenomenal mother as well. But in general, Diane Wiest, Dee Wallace, my 2 favorite moms, and Diane Wiest is just giving that motherly love in this whole film. In The Lost Boys, part of the reason I like it so much, she really reminds me of my mom, even down to some of the mom-type shit she would say to the kids, like, hey, aren't we friends anymore? Like, that was a line straight out of my mom's vernacular. So I really love Lost Boys. It makes me feel good. If you haven't seen The Lost Boys, you gotta watch this movie. It's also laced with all kinds of homoerotic subtext, which is not so subtextual in this day and age. It's kind of what the movie's analyzed a lot for, but it adds like a layer of fun and camp to it as well. It's also got a great theme song that plays, Cry Little Sister. I genuinely love the song Cry Little Sister. I've got it on a 7-inch that glows in the dark, baby. On the back side of this album is the other song, I Still Believe, which is the song they're listening to when they're all gathered on the beach listening to the concert with that beefcake with the saxophone really wailing on it. I still believe. That's the song that is on the back of this album. But movie number 1 is Joel Schumacher's best film by a wide margin, The Lost Boys. Movie number 2 is Robert Rodriguez's From Dusk Till Dawn, with a script by Quentin Tarantino, also stars Quentin Tarantino, and George Clooney, and I think his first really big role after starring in ER for so long. This is when he made the leap from television star to bona fide movie star, which is a tough leap for actors to make, but he did it with some elegance and quite a bit of success. He's now an Academy Award winner. This movie also stars Juliette Lewis, just a year after Natural Born Killers, playing a totally opposite role, equally convincing, really showing Juliette Lewis's amazing range as an actress. Also stars Harvey Keitel as the dad. And this movie pays tribute to John Carpenter's Assault on Precinct 13, which we're going to watch in a few weeks when we have our Siege movie night. But this movie could easily fit on our Siege movie night, as could The Mist, which we watched in week 1. But this one really pays tribute to the Siege movies that came before it, especially Assault on Precinct 13, which essentially kicked off that whole genre, because there's a guy in the movie who's wearing a t-shirt the entire film that's like a band shirt, I guess, but it says Precinct 13, but that's an obvious nod to Carpenter's film that came before it. This movie does a really amazing thing where it swaps genres halfway through the film. Now, technically, that wasn't the first film to do it, even not even the first film to do it kind of at like a strip club with vampires. There's a movie called Vamp that does it as well that came out before this, came out in the 80s, I think, maybe the very early 90s. But this movie does it very successfully, and I can only imagine what it was like seeing this in theaters, not knowing it was going to be a vampire movie. That must have been quite the surprise. Unfortunately, I saw it on video when it came out, and I already knew that it was a vampire movie. That's why I wanted to see it. But it's still a lot of fun, whether you know that it is or not. Obviously, you know that I'm talking about it as a vampire movie, and it's been out since the 90s, so you know about this movie. I said it's written by Quentin Tarantino. It also stars him in a role that is surprisingly good. He's really good in this movie. He's not always the strongest performer. He's really solid in From Dusk Till Dawn. He plays sort of a lecherous pervert, and there's a scene where the absolutely impeccable Selma Hayek is giving a striptease with a big albino snake around her, and she goes up to Quentin Tarantino and she shoves her foot in his mouth. And of course, everyone knows about his foot fetish. Everyone jokes about it now. But and then she pours liquor down her leg into his mouth, and then spits some in his mouth. And it's really funny if you watch this with the commentary by Robert Rodriguez. He says, and this scene is Quentin Tarantino, the writer, taking care of Quentin Tarantino, the actor, which I thought was kind of funny. But the movie, it's absolutely trashy, but it revels in the trash. It's classic exploitation cinema. It knows exactly what it is, and it is a blast from start to finish. And the movie moves so fast that it never drags. It is a lot of fun. Cheech Marin plays 3 roles. He's great in all 3 of them. It also stars Fred Williamson, a classic blaxploitation actor. He's phenomenal in this movie. Also stars special effects guru Tom Savini, who's also great in the movie. The movie is packed with really fun, good, believable performances, and it's just a really fun vampire movie as well. This is tailor-made for, like, college guys. I saw it first when I was in elementary school, but I loved it all through elementary school, junior high, and I still like this movie. It's admittedly very silly, but I can't help it. I just love this movie. Unabashed, good time. Movie number 3 is one that I sort of wanted to include in my second week of Quarantine Quadruple Features, because I think it's one of the best horror comedies out there from the 80s. But I knew we were going to watch it on Vampire Night, and that is Fright Night, written and directed by Tom Holland of Child's Play fame. I do think this is Tom Holland's masterpiece. I've also seen this one with an audience. It plays incredibly well. It's very scary. It's very funny. But this one, the horror in this one really affected me when I was a kid. They have these prosthetic effects on some of the vampires where they have, like, big exaggerated mouths with really sharp teeth, and the visual is really, really scary. So the movie fucked with me quite a bit when I was a kid. But it is wonderful. Stars Chris Sarandon as just an uber sexy vampire who's a next door neighbor to a kid who sees him doing vampire-y shit. It's kind of like Rear Window, but with vampires. I heard an interview with Chris Sarandon where he said he didn't think he was sexy. He just thought he was kind of a normal guy, so he didn't know he's going to pull this role off. And then he just, like, said, okay, well, you don't have to be sexy, but your character is sexy, so just kind of embody sexy. And it's really amazing how acting works, because I've heard a lot of women talk about him in this role, and he's a very sexy vampire. The kid who plays his best friend, who's like, "You're so cool, Brewster," when he's a vampire, that kid is freaky, man. He really scared me when I was a kid, and I think this one holds up as well. It's a terrific vampire movie. It had no need for a remake, even though the remake is kind of fun. This is one of my favorite vampire movies of all time, one of my favorite horror comedies, one of my favorite horror films. This one is A+. Rounding out Fast and Fun Vampire Night, we are watching Catherine Bigelow's Near Dark, which I unfortunately don't have a proper copy of. The DVD special edition that was out was pretty rare and kind of expensive, and it's never really gotten a very proper Blu-ray release, so a company really needs to get on that and give us some kick-ass special features as well. This copy was actually burned by a friend of mine, Brandon, a number of years ago, and I was happy to drudge this one up for the Quadruple Feature tonight. So this is directed by Catherine Bigelow, who did Detroit, Zero Dark 30, The Hurt Locker. She's known for these really kind of intense recent historical dramas, but she got her start doing sort of exploitation cinema. She did a movie called Strange Days in the early 90s, which is an awesome sci-fi action movie written by her husband at the time, James Cameron, and she pulled from James Cameron's cachet of players from Aliens. A lot of the stars of Aliens star in Near Dark as this kind of cool Western tribe of vampires that travel around the country just eating people. Stars Lance Hendrickson is kind of the patriarch of the group, and it stars Bill Paxton in one of his best, most unhinged performances. Bill Paxton, who we lost a few years ago, really an American treasure, and he has such a dynamite scene in this movie in a bar where they're killing off the patrons in the bar one by one, and he kills a guy and he's sucking his blood, and then he's covered in blood, and he goes like, "It's finger licking good," and it's just such a good performance. A real tragedy when we lost him. He had a remarkable career where he started out playing kind of a dipshit and a bully and an idiot and a mean bad guy for so long. And then he had this remarkable arc as he aged so gracefully. He started playing such a kind, generous, lovable guy. He was lovable in all of the performances, but toward the end of his career, he was always being cast as like a really nice guy. So it's kind of a very interesting trajectory that his career had. But he's in this movie and he is flat out incredible as a vampire. Everyone's really good. It's almost like a Western movie in the way that it kind of approaches a lot of the action and the story. It's very simplistic, but really incredibly effective. I wish Catherine Bigelow, who is such a skilled filmmaker, would go back to a horror or exploitation-like movie just once more. With the amount of power that she has now, she could really get funding for some kick-ass horror or action movie or something like that. She also did Point Break from the 90s starring Keanu Reeves, which is a ton of fun as well. She makes really, really fun movies. Now she does really great, heavy, dramatic movies, but she's very versatile. And Near Dark is wrapping up our night of fast and fun, kick-ass vampire movies.